And I want to thank you all for being here. I know that your support is very meaningful and very comforting to the family at such a difficult time. I'm going to be sharing some traditional prayers and thoughts. I'll tell you a little bit about Joan, and particularly her Jewish life, and especially her Jewish life here at Temple Chai. And then each of her children have some thoughts that they want to share as well. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. The service is going to be mostly in English, but I wanted to start off with a few words of Hebrew, the first verses of the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bin ot deshe yarbitzeni al me menuchot yinachaleni, nafshi yeshoved yinageni v'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech beged salmavet lo yirara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha hema yinachamuni. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Adonai forever. My understanding is that Joan loved music and loved the music of the liturgy. I'm not a cantor, but I did want to sing a little bit just to honor that passion that she had in her life. And I'm reflecting on the words of Psalm 121, which is so especially meaningful to us here in Phoenix. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where does my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. So it sounds like this. Esa enai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esa enai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz. Continuing with a selection from the book of Isaiah, which reminds us of the transience of all of our lives. A voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, The flower fades when a wind of Adonai blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. It's customary in Jewish homes on Friday night as part of our Shabbat celebration that a man recites the 31st chapter of the book of Proverbs in praise of his wife and everything that she does to sustain their household. It's come to be known as Eshet Chayil, based on the first two words of the opening verse, Eshet Chayil mi yimtza, a woman of valor who can find. And the text continues, her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Boy, does that describe Joan. Eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband too, and he praises her. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. So as we gather here together, her deeds do indeed speak her praise. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the spirit which we lay within the earth. The spirit itself cannot die. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our beloved Joan. Grant her that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. Oh God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which love inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who cling to their parents' hand unafraid. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping. One final thought before we turn to our personal reflections. This comes from the book of Ben Sira, which is not part of the biblical canon, but is an important source of wisdom in our tradition. And I think that it is meaningful because it offers us the comfort that sometime death comes with a sense of merciful relief from suffering. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead, hide not your grief, do not restrain your mourning, but remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace, and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest than constant sickness. Let us not seek to understand what is too difficult for us, nor search for what is hidden, nor be preoccupied with what is beyond, for we have been shown more than we can comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a good reputation endures forever. Joan was born in a small town in Keewatin, Minnesota. Theodore and Francis used to take the kids to Hibbing to connect with the Jewish community there. And Joan often talked about how hard it was growing up so isolated and having to deal with overt discrimination. Her experiences as a young person informed a lifetime passion for Jewish life and a commitment to Jewish continuity. She never failed to correct those who would wish her a Merry Christmas, proudly explaining that she didn't celebrate that holiday. It was so meaningful and important to her that her grandchildren receive Jewish educations and celebrate their B'nai Mitzvah, following in Jim, Sue, and Linda's footsteps. Joan and Harvey were married for 67 years. They met through a friend who was in the sorority with her, and they were blessed by 3 children and 9 grandchildren. Harvey says that he saw her coming down the stairs at that sorority, and he thought to himself, she's the one. The marriage was not always an easy one, and Joan's involvement with her children and grandchildren, along with her work, both paid and volunteer, were critical to her emotional well-being. She was her own person who was always concerned with how she can contribute to her community. It's a tribute to Joan that she raised 3 children who have much in common and are also able to each express their own uniqueness. She supported them for who they were and never fostered competition between them. In return, they each convey an enormous respect for their mom. As a parent, Joan had the gift of seeing each of her children and her 9 grandchildren, for that matter, as individuals. She made sure to find time for each one and often traveled to be there for special moments. Harvey and Joan shared a family trip to Israel to pass on their Zionist spirit to the next generation. Linda had the opportunity to wear her mother's talit at Women of the Wall at a prayer service in Jerusalem, and Joan was so touched and honored to know that that had occurred. Harvey recalls that he always accompanied Joan to services on the high holidays. That was very meaningful to Joan. Community service was a value Joan learned from her families, who were leaders at the JCC in Minnesota. Both her father and her father-in-law set that example, and she went on to be active in the JCC as well as at Mount Zion Temple in the Sisterhood. Joan supported the National Council of Jewish Women with her time and energy. Their mission to be a growing grassroots network of courageous and compassionate individuals who improve the lives of women, children, and families every day so resonated with her. Joan cared so much about children and families that when she received her MSW, she sought employment at the Jewish Family and Children's Service. Her caring concern was critical to resettling Soviet refugee families. Joan's work expanded to the geriatric community. In Hebrew, the word for "and they shall give v'natnu" is a palindrome. It reads the same from front to back. The rabbis intuit from that nature of the Hebrew word that as we give, so we shall receive back. And it's ironic that towards the end of her life, Joan was on the receiving end of the loving support of geriatric social workers just like herself. Initially snowbirds, Joan and Harvey moved to Phoenix full-time in the early 1990s. In Phoenix, Joan connected with the Brandeis Women's Group, and she thrived on the intellectual environment in addition to the social engagement. A lifetime lover of reading, she was widely read, and the annual Brandeis Book and Author Luncheon was a highlight. Joan belonged to two different book groups, and the Sunday New York Times was a ritual in her home. Ultimately, she served as president of that Brandeis chapter. Joan was such a vital part of our Temple Chai family. Rabbi Chernow recalls Joan coming to Shacharit regularly, and she said that Joan always had a huge smile on her face and deep love of the community. She brightened the room, Rabbi Chernow said, as soon as she walked in the door. As Jim put it, she was a devout Reform Jew. Joan was a valued member of our Shalom Center caring community volunteers for many years. She was compassionate, kind, and upbeat, and she brought those important traits to the work that she did at the Shalom Center. Harvey describes her as a very giving person. Joan couldn't be idle. Even in her final years at Belmont, it was she who served as the welcoming committee to greet new residents. She loved to be busy with good works and filled her days with helping others. Joan will be remembered for her commitment to Jewish life, for her passion for learning, and her focus on community service. We can best honor her memory by renewing our own commitment to these values that she held dear. Zecher Tzadeket Livracha, may the memory of the righteous be for blessing. I am going to turn it over now to Jim and then Sue and Linda to share their perspective as children.
She was just a small town girl, born December 3rd, 1932, and raised in the small town of Keewatin, Minnesota, in what was the heart of the Iron Range. As the name implies, this was not about the lakes or the scenery, but was a land of grit and determination, of iron ore, but a land where, some might say, the spinal structure of what was industry at the time was built. It was in that small town that a young Joni Bream would teach an even younger boy in Sunday school, third grade Sunday school, she always told me, young Bobby Zimmerman. He went on to write these lyrics that fit our gathering today. When you're standing on the crossroads that you cannot comprehend, just remember that death is not the end. And all your dreams have vanished and you don't know what's up the bend, just remember that death is not the end. Not the end, not the end. Just remember that death is not the end. The times they are changing, and change they did as Joni Bream attended the University of Minnesota, where she earned a degree in speech pathology. She married Harvey, she had her children, and she raised her family. She found the joy of motherhood and the meaning of volunteerism. Democratic caucuses, the National Council of Jewish Women, and so much more. Linda, Sue, and I recall growing up and there being a poem or a card or a poster. Maybe it was for a birthday party or a family event. I do not recall exactly. But there was a line that read, "Joan, Joan, always on the phone." I laughed then, we all did, perhaps not realizing that it may have been slightly disparaging or demeaning. But I remember that line now with a different significance. She was always on the phone. As Linda remarked the other night, she loved to talk. As Eileen and Rana both noted during a family Zoom this week, she was a good listener. And that is really the message, if not the theme. The phone, you see, has two parts to it, the microphone and the receiver. And it was on the receiving end that Mom excelled. She listened. Sue has great memories of countless conversations. Betsy Kane, one of Linda's oldest friends, told Linda how she always recalled being able to talk to Mom. My oldest friend, Brad Finn, said exactly the same thing. He has so many memories of our kitchen table and conversations with my mom. You know, I used to think that my friends were blowing me off for our nightly plans when I was in high school, only to find that they had been talking to my mother for an hour. Brad's second mom, Betsy's friendly ear. Sue's husband Steve remarked the other night about the heated conversations and intentional debate he would have with her. To his great amusement, but also amazement, as she grasped the subject. Politics, culture, books, religion, boyfriends, girlfriends, school, grades, and plans. She loved it all. And politics. My wife Laura always found her favorite time with Joni to be after everyone in the house went to bed. It was night owl time, and they would stay up late and talk. For Tyler, it was the intense conversations on religion and solving the world's problems. Did I mention politics? David, Linda's husband, would engage her in endless debate on Canada versus the United States. Let's start with healthcare. If only she could have weighed in on vaccines. To quote my oldest, Alexandra, I think my favorite memory is never being able to get off the phone with her, because we would just go back and forth telling each other how much we loved each other. It represents her essence and what a loving, compassionate, and beautiful soul she was. Amazingly similar, Austin, my youngest, said that no matter the topic or time of day, she listened with all of her soul. And perhaps this is one reason we mourn so deeply today. It is that we have been mourning the loss of intellect, deep intellectual discourse, the dissection of an issue, the question that provoked more questions and a few answers, the fully engaged conversation that we lost in recent years. Alzheimer's is a path, a journey. We as loved ones walk along with its victims. We are on the path, but we may not always know where the path is or where it is leading us. But if you dispense with the concern over where you will end up, you can still enjoy the journey. And we did have that lately. We were in small towns shopping for shoes. I was asked if I had met a girl yet. I would be asked how school was going or whether my mother's semester in grad school had started. Let me reassure you, she was happy. She loved our Sunday afternoon Zooms. Life became simple, but also simply joyful. Atul Gawande, Harvard surgeon and author of Being Mortal, quotes the philosopher Ronald Dworkin. To be the authors of our lives, this is the very marrow of being human. What did Dworkin mean? We create our paths. We write our narrative. And Mom's path was long, winding, and beautiful. Now don't get me wrong, there was no yellow brick road, although I do want you to know that Somewhere Over the Rainbow was playing as she passed. There were bumps and rocks and pebbles along the way. Slippery sometimes, hills to climb, and valleys to get out of, but she persisted. You realize that as a 17, 18-year-old male in the late 1970s, when your mother told you she was going to start a new career and go back to school to get a master's degree, how influential that was? Even Brad Finn told me the other day, your mother was always such a strong, independent woman in my eyes. Not only liberating, this was inspiring. How else do you explain the gaggle of college graduate grandchildren she loved and cherished so much? A nurse, men and women of business, media, computer science, a special education teacher, and even a lawyer. The other night, we all described her as the 110% grandmother. She was all in. While she loved to be with all the grandchildren, she cherished one-on-one time. Whether by phone or in person, she loved spending time with each family. Perhaps that way, she could give the 110% without fraction or apportionment. Danny recalled that her grandmother's best quality was her warm hugs. It is the hugs that Alexandra cherishes as well. Deep and long hugs, as she described it. Rachel's husband, Mike, remembered that his very first greeting from Joni was like he had been in the family for years. Kendall remembers getting American Girl dolls from her and feeling so special. Austin said that Grandma taught him about patience, especially that time that he helped her order potbellies for the first time. Corey was able to visit her recently at Belmont Village and loves the memory of her wanting to greet everyone who passed by, whether she knew them or not, or was meeting them for the first time or the first time again. Gawande notes that the battle of being mortal is the battle to maintain the integrity of one's life, to avoid becoming so diminished or dissipated or subjugated that who you are becomes disconnected from who you were or who you want to be. And so you ask, how did Joni do that? She was perhaps only a shell of herself in the end. Had not Alzheimer's taken who she was away from us? Gawande adds, per Dworkin, that being the authors of our lives allows us to lead our own lives rather than be led along them. And you can see that through her children, her grandchildren, and all of you who are her family and friends, that she did just that. She led her life to the end. She may not have known where the path was leading, but it was her path. She was never deprived of being happy. Her infectious smile and sense of humor never dissipated. She was not subjugated to disease. Whether it was her fortitude in overcoming an incredibly complex fracture a year ago, or the loss of being in the present, she remained present. She thanked everyone. She told everyone she loved them. She thrived in her community at Belmont Village, and I assure you she regained incredible vitality in the last years of her life. I know that if we asked the staff at Belmont, they would all tell you they not only gave their time and compassion, but they received love in return. Gawande notes that as people become aware of their finitude of their lives, they ask only to be permitted, insofar as possible, to keep shaping the story of their life in the world. Joni's story, punctuated by "oh my God" and "are you kidding?" was a story of people, being surrounded by people. Again, whether she knew them or not. I'll let you in on a little secret. Like my mother, I like to be in on every conversation around me. I figure everyone can be my friend, to the point where my kids will give me the look or tell me to stop before I start. I got that from her. As Bob Dylan wrote in Forever Young, may your hands always be busy, may your feet always be swift, may you have a strong foundation when the winds of change shift. And you all? What do the winds of today sing out to you? What foundation do you share with Joni? You stand by a friend. You stand behind her in support. You stand in front of him if there is danger. But you always stand with your friend. In fact, when Alex and Zach were married, Joni had one important thing to say to Kendall's boyfriend, Max. Be sure you take care of my Kendall. You become and stay a lifelong learner if you know Joni. You ask others, so how are you doing? You overcook chicken, but you make chocolate chip cookies that melt in your mouth. You volunteer. You play games. On the floor with the kids when they are young, and with your friends at the mahjong table when you are older. And you smile, and smile, and smile. And when you experience joy, it is not subtle. It is an oh my God moment. Do you remember your Joni oh my God moment? Tell someone about it today. As my daughter Kendall says, she can hear her grandma's voice every time she finds herself saying, oh my God. If you only met her when she was ill, you still saw it. But if you did not know her and did not know her when she was well, let me tell you, she was a small town girl who led a bigger city life and filled a world with friends, family, conversation, and smiles. To her last breath, she remained connected to who she was and who she wanted to be, the author of her life and the prologue to ours that follow.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was amazing. What an incredible, incredible tribute. We're going to invite Sue now to share her thoughts.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I know that it would mean a lot to my mom if she knew how many people were here to show their support. I want to read a letter that I wrote to her. Dear Mom, I started writing this letter to you as you were nearing the end of your time with us. It felt like the best way that I could let you know how much you have meant to me. I guess you could call this a love letter of sorts, but also a letter of honor, of respect, and of huge gratitude. I love you very much, and I feel so fortunate to have had you as my mom and having had such a wonderful relationship with you for all of these years. You've lived a long life and are leaving quite a legacy behind. When I think of your life, Mom, I think of your love of family and how important it always was to you. You were the thread that joined a lot of us together, and now it is up to us to continue that. When I close my eyes and picture you, I see your smile. Your smile had that great quality of kindness, of interest, and wisdom that made you Joan Bream. One of the greatest gifts that I got from you, Mom, was the gift of gab, or to put it a little nicer way, the gift of connecting with others. The apple does not fall far from the tree, Mom. Grandpa Ted was quite the people person, and I have to say I inherited that need to connect with others as well. All we have to do is mention your name, Joan Bream or Joni, and whoever we are talking with immediately smiles and has something nice to say about you. That is your legacy. Mom, you've taught me so many things. You taught me to value reading and questioning. You taught me the value of getting a higher education, which it took me a long time to do, but I finally did it. You, of course, were my role model. I so miss our chats on the phone, and better yet, in person, over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and would give anything to go back to those days. But I know that time moves on, and we all are on our own journey, and sadly, yours has taken you to a new place. I know that we can still have conversations, Mom, but they will always be different from now on. They will be more private, quieter, and likely a lot shorter. I want to thank you for your endless devotion to my kids as their grandmother. You set out to be the best long-distance grandma and step-grandma ever, and you did just that. I will always remember how you sent them cards for every occasion possible and wrote to them, but you always signed it, Love, Grandma Joni and Papa Harvey. You never thought just about yourself. Through you, my kids learned about their Jewish identity, and because of that, they were both bar mitzvahed, a very proud moment for all of us. Mom, I already miss our shopping adventures, our gossip sessions, and discussions about the latest book that we both read. I miss your smile and your painted fingernails and your colorful outfits that you bought at J. Jill. I miss your horrible driving and your out-of-tune singing and your overcooked, dried-out chicken dinners. I miss seeing you always wearing a hood pulled tightly around your chin because you were always cold. I miss you always running back into the house while the rest of us were already buckled into the car in the garage because you forgot something, usually not just once, but often twice. I will always miss your smile, your smeared eye makeup, and your little feet. Most of all, I miss your hugs and the love that only a mother can share with her daughter. I love you forever, Mom. I will love you always.
Thank you, Sue. So beautiful, so beautiful. Linda is going to get the final word.
Linda's going live. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here in these really strange pandemic times as we go through this final transition. I looked and I saw that there are over 100 people here. My mom always knew how to draw a crowd. And thank you, Rabbi, for your really, really beautiful and lovely words. And as the rabbi said, grief is really the price that you pay for love. And if that's true, we would all be billionaires. From the messages and words of condolences that I and my siblings have been getting over the last few days, everybody that had the privilege of knowing our mother just loved her. From that infectious smile to her heartfelt and genuine concern for your well-being, she just had so much to give. Our mom really was the family matriarch, the keeper of information. She just knew everything. You called her if you wanted to know the name of that second cousin, you know, the one that lived in Toronto and was married to Sylvia, but then got divorced and moved to California and married a 20-year-old. Like, she would know that. She would know that. She also knew how to make her roset. She knew how to give you a good book recommendation. She would give you advice on your boyfriend. I think my cousins would attest to the fact that my mom just gave great advice. If you needed input on a dilemma, she was a great person to go to. She always, always had time for you. I remember when my kids were teenagers and they were supposed to be doing their homework and grandma would call. And I would tell them, you guys, you've got to keep it short this time. You've got homework to do. About an hour later, I would go to their rooms to check on them, open the door, and I would usually end up saying something like, "What? You're still talking to grandma?" But you know, those talks, they formed the basis for a really close relationship. And as Jim mentioned, she had those hour-long talks with each and every one of her grandchildren. But I want to bring you a little deeper. Our mom was not only loving, caring, kind, bubbly, and giving. She was extremely intelligent. She was spiritual and she was very introspective. We shared a love of our respective careers. My mom a social worker and me a psychologist. She loved her work, and I mean loved her work. Through her work, she found her true identity and her intellect was really allowed to flourish. She was a true mentor to me. She always encouraged me to live a really full life, a life that included meaningful work, community, volunteerism, friendship, spirituality, along with the very important job of parenting. Several years ago, when my parents were preparing to move from their home in Arizona to an independent living community, we were helping them to downsize, you know, and go through things. And my mom gave me what I considered to be the greatest gift of all. She gave me 2 of her journals that she kept when she was exactly the same age as I am now. And it is in these journals that I really discovered the depth of her introspection, of her insight, and most importantly, of her strength. They captured two very poignant periods of her life. One was her retirement, which is something that I'm facing soon, and the other was the loss of her own father. I'm going to try to read you her advice on dealing with loss. I don't think you'll be surprised at how relevant and practical it is, but I hope that you'll find the spiritual aspects of it as beautiful as I did. So here's what she said when she buried her father after his long battle with Alzheimer's disease. She said, "Dad's burial released him. To me, it was a spiritual experience. I truly sensed that at the moment the rabbi said that Dad was now released from his disease, his dignity was restored. And at that moment, Dad left the coffin and soared above us all as in a Chagall painting. So Dad is free, and we are finally free to mourn what we have been mourning for more than 5 years. Grieving is a process. I was slowed down. Life was slowed down. And I allowed myself to feel very sad. Even though parts of Dad were gone already, even though he didn't know me for the last 6 months, I find I miss seeing him and checking on him. And now I will never see him again." Here she gets practical. So what has been helpful? My mother goes on to say, number 1, saying Kaddish at daily services as much as I can, and even saying it alone. But the act of publicly declaring myself a mourner is a way of showing respect for my father. Writing thank you notes, looking at pictures and using them as continuity. And number 4, music. It frees up the emotions. Good advice, Mom. I intend to take it in the days and weeks to come. In closing, I just want to say that I hope you heard part of Joan Bream reflected in each of her children today. And I think that together that Sue and Jim and I and our children and our children's children will carry forward her legacy. L'dor v'dor, and let us say amen.
Thank you so much, Linda. What an incredible gift to have your mother's words to speak to you and continue to provide guidance and comfort at this challenging moment of losing her. It is a fearful thing, it has been written, to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. I'm going to continue now with the El Malay Rachamim prayer. In this prayer, we're going to refer to Joan by her Hebrew name, Rivka bat Yitzchak Ufega, Rivka, the daughter of Yitzchak and Fega. El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamramim, Hamitzeh Menucha Nechuna Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Mutahorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim et Nishmat Rivka, Bat Yitzchak Ufega Shahalcha La'olama. Baal Harachamim Yastireha B'Seifter Kanafav La'olamim V'Yitzror B'Tzror HaChayim et Nishmata. Adonai Hu Nachalata V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved ones who has entered eternity, grant her clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Merciful God, forever enfold her in the embrace of your wings. Secure her soul in eternity. Adonai, she is yours. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Going to conclude with the Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. We'll rise as we are able. And just hearing Linda talk about how meaningful it was for her to say Kaddish for her father, I can only hope and pray for each of us that it is as meaningful for us to say Kaddish for her. Yitgadal, v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach la'olam u'la'omei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'Kudusha brichu. La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yalma v'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. May the one who makes peace in the highest heavens bring peace, strength, and comfort to us, to all who mourn Joan, to all who mourn in our community. And we say, Amen. At the conclusion of the service, we bless the family that Hamakom Yinachem Etchem, God should comfort you, B'toch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim, along with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. And I want to thank everyone who was here today once again to pay tribute to Joan's memory. It was a very, very meaningful tribute. Thank you so much. And thank you to those who will be accompanying her body to its final resting place as well.
Thank you, Rabbi.